Olive Thomas's death stands as one of Hollywood's most infamous scandals. Earlier today, let's explore her life together with me. Her story, set against the glamorous backdrop of early Hollywood, captured the public's imagination when headlines declared Olive Thomas dead from poison. The sophisticated Hotel Crillon in Paris suddenly became the stage for a grim drama. A valet, going about his usual morning duties, stumbled upon a chilling discovery. The luxurious royal suite, once a symbol of indulgence, had turned into a scene of sorrow. Amidst the opulent surroundings lay Olive Thomas, her lifeless body draped in an elegant sable opera cape. Olive's story is steeped in mystery, almost like a Gothic novel come to life. While her name may not be widely recognized today, in 1920, she was a superstar. Tragically, her life ended just shy of her 26th birthday, under circumstances as shocking as they were puzzling. Her career had been gaining momentum, with her second-to-last film, The Flapper, garnering attention. She and her husband, Jack Pickford, had traveled to Paris for their honeymoon, but what should have been a romantic getaway turned into a nightmare. After a night of revelry, Olive accidentally ingested a lethal combination of mercury bichloride and alcohol. The mercury bichloride, meant to treat Jack's syphilis, was never intended for internal use. While the public was led to believe her death was accidental, rumors and speculations swirled around. Her funeral drew massive crowds, with fans overcome by grief, some fainting on the spot. But the reality of her death was far more harrowing than any Hollywood script. The details of Jack's illness, Olive's agonizing reaction to the poison, and her slow death in a Paris hospital painted a bleak and tragic picture. She lies in a modest grave in the Bronx, far from the sunny California burial sites of her Pickford family. Her tomb, marked only with the name Pickford, gives no hint of the vibrant young actress she once was. Meanwhile, the rest of the Pickford family rests under individual headstones in a prestigious family plot. Olive's story today is one of sorrow, a life full of promise, cut tragically short. It's a tale that lingers, haunting and bittersweet, like a love letter left unfinished. Born on October 20, 1894, in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, Olive Thomas entered the world as Oliva R. Duffy, with the R honoring her mother, Rena. While her birth name was Oliva, she went by Olive for most of her life, and those close to her affectionately called her Ollie. Her childhood took a tragic turn in 1906 when her father, James Duffy, who worked in the structural steel industry, passed away unexpectedly. Following his death, Olive and her brothers, James and William, moved to McKees Rocks, a Pittsburgh suburb, to live with their grandparents. This move allowed their mother, Rena, to work long hours in a factory to support the family. Eventually, Rena remarried Harry M. Van Kirk, who worked for the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad. Together they had a daughter, Harriet, whom Olive adored. Sadly, Harriet's life was cut short in a car accident at just 17 years old. Life after her father's death wasn't easy for Olive or her siblings. During this challenging time, Olive began working as a nude model. While some speculated that her brothers pressured her into this line of work, the timeline doesn't quite fit. Her brothers were only 12 and 9, while Olive was the eldest. It's more likely that Olive made the decision herself, perhaps drawn by the promise of new clothes and the opportunity to help her struggling family. Despite her hardships, Olive was known for her thoughtful and selfless nature. At 15, Olive left school to work at Horne's department store in Pittsburgh. By June 1919, Motion Picture magazine noted that she had climbed the ranks to become a salesgirl, earning the distinction of being the youngest saleslady at the store. Olive often looked back fondly on those days, admiring her supervisor, Miss Milligan, who oversaw the gingham department. Olive even aspired to emulate her. However, the drudgery of her job and the smoky industrial backdrop of Pennsylvania couldn't compete with the allure of New York City, a place Olive dreamed of conquering. She often imagined her face replacing the glamorous salesgirls pictured on the chocolate boxes displayed in drugstore windows. This wasn't just a passing fantasy. Olive had the beauty to make it happen, and she was well aware of it. In 1911, Olive married Bernard Krug Thomas. At just 16 years old, Olive quickly realized that marriage wasn't what she had envisioned. This realization pushed her to leave Pittsburgh behind and chase bigger dreams in New York City. Once in New York, Olive stayed with a relative in Harlem. She spent her days wandering the streets, looking for work, and eventually secured a position at the basement counter of a department store. While she was still selling gingham, this job felt like a step up from her life in Pittsburgh. It brought her closer to her ultimate goal of making a name for herself. Olive's ambition and determination were unwavering, and it was this drive that set her on the path to stardom. Olive's delicate, doll-like beauty played a key role in helping her achieve her dreams. Her spontaneous decision to enter a contest called The Most Beautiful Girl in New York City marked the beginning of an extraordinary transformation from an unknown shopgirl to a celebrated star. The competition, organized by commercial artist Howard Chandler Christie and promoted by a local newspaper aiming to attract working-class readers, sought to find the ultimate representation of New York beauty. The winner would gain not only prizes, but also the chance to have their picture published in the paper. Having left behind the dreariness of Pittsburgh, Olive's Irish charm was ready to take center stage. She called out sick from work, dressed simply yet elegantly, and made her way downtown to Christie's studio, where she joined a crowd of hopeful young women. Each contestant reflected the diverse beauty of New York's melting pot, but Olive's radiance set her apart. She won the competition, earning her a feature in the newspaper. After being declared the most beautiful girl in New York City, Olive's fame began to soar. Renowned artist Harrison Fisher even went on to proclaim her the most beautiful girl in the world, a sentiment echoed by many artists and photographers of the era. Her striking looks quickly made her a sought-after model, posing for prominent artists like Penryn Stanlaws, William Haskell Coffin, and Alberto Vargas. She earned 50 cents an hour, equivalent to about $6 today. But Olive wasn't content to stop there. She found herself in the office of Florence Ziegfeld Jr., the mastermind behind the Ziegfeld Follies, a theatrical revue inspired by Paris's legendary Folies Bergère. At the time, this Broadway production was one of the fastest routes to stardom in pre-Hollywood America. In 1911, Ziegfeld rebranded his show as the Ziegfeld Follies, later launching the Ziegfeld Midnight Frolic in 1918, a late-night revue that combined music, dance, and entertainment. The Frolic, which later became the Ziegfeld 9-0 Revue, served as a proving ground for future stars of the Follies. However, with the onset of Prohibition in 1922, the show's popularity waned, as much of its success had relied on the free-flowing alcohol that accompanied the performances. As a Ziegfeld girl, Olive became an overnight sensation. Ziegfeld's productions were known for celebrating the beauty of the American girl, and Olive embodied that ideal perfectly. With her newfound fame, she graced newspaper features and captivated the hearts of wealthy admirers who showered her with extravagant gifts. She received everything from diamond necklaces and rings to orchids and other luxurious tokens of affection. There were even whispers that German ambassador Count Bernstorff had gifted her a $10,000 pearl necklace, worth nearly $100,000 today. Men were drawn to her like moths to a flame. Philip Mindil, a dramatic editor for the New York Tribune, once remarked that knowing Olive was akin to befriending an angel. Newspaper editors clamored for the chance to feature her in their Sunday supplements, and she became the darling of Broadway. Her relationship with Ziegfeld himself only added to her mystique, and her growing confidence eventually led her to end her unhappy marriage. On February 25, 1915, Olive officially divorced her small-town husband after 4 years. The only thing she kept from that chapter of her life was her married name, Thomas. Although Olive Thomas rarely visited her Pittsburgh hometown, her loyalty to her family never wavered. She often sent her mother generous checks and extravagant gifts, like silk stockings, showcasing her devotion. As a Ziegfeld showgirl earning $75 a week, a substantial income at the time, equivalent to about $1,400 today. Olive had come a long way from her humble beginnings as a shop girl making just $3 weekly. Despite her financial success, she was known for her lavish spending on loved ones, sometimes to the point of overdrawing her bank account. Her generosity, while admirable, often left her struggling to balance her finances. By 1916, Olive's talent had reached new heights, earning her a solo performance in the frolic scenes. Her singing impressed Ziegfeld so much that he was on the verge of offering her a major role in his productions. This marked a turning point for Ziegfeld, who, while initially flattered that his performers were being sought after by the film industry, soon realized he was up against a powerful competitor. In response, he launched campaigns promoting the Ziegfeld Follies, emphasizing the allure of American girls. The frolic shows, though similar to the Follies, had their own daring twist. Performers wore even less, with some even appearing nude. These shows featured stunning, charismatic women entertaining some of the wealthiest men in the world. Ziegfeld, always striving for grandeur, became legendary for his opulent productions. For instance, he once paid an actress $600, around $5,000 today, to wear a gown worth $1,200, about $1,000 today, for a brief walk across the stage. His productions grew increasingly elaborate, with costs escalating to the point where he once scrapped a $25,000 production, equivalent to $250,000 today, for being too over the top. Ziegfeld couldn't compete with Hollywood's lure. Many of his stars, including Olive, left the stage for the silver screen. Over time, he lost other iconic performers like Billy Dove, Peggy Gard, Irene Dunne, Marion Davies, Barbara Stanwyck, and Hedy Lamarr to the film industry. Ironically, some women Ziegfeld had rejected for not meeting his showgirl standards, like Norma Shearer and Alice Faye, went on to become Hollywood legends. Ziegfeld's personal life was equally dramatic. He was infamous for his romantic dalliances with his Follies girls, and Olive was among his favorites. His wife, Billie Burke, later admitted in her autobiography that Olive was one of the few showgirls Ziegfeld genuinely cared about. Ziegfeld not only lost Olive as a star performer, but also as a lover, making her departure especially bitter. Olive first crossed paths with Jack Pickford at a dance in a beach cafe. Reflecting on their meeting in a 1919 interview, she fondly recalled how Jack's dancing won her over. She mentioned that they spent 8 months getting to know each other, much of it on the dance floor, before deciding they could spend the rest of their lives together. Their relationship moved quickly, and on their third date, Jack surprised Olive with an extravagant gift, a $12,000 platinum cigarette case worth about $125,000 today, engraved with the words, "To Olive Thomas, the only sweetheart I will ever have." Despite Jack's reputation as a hard-drinking, womanizing partygoer with a tendency for getting into trouble, their bond appeared to be built on genuine affection. Rumors swirled about a secret wedding between Jack and Olive in New Jersey on October 25, 1916. It was said that actor Thomas Megan acted as the witness. But with no marriage license ever found, doubts persist to this day. Ziegfeld's later years were a mix of chaos and desperation. Financial troubles weighed heavily on him, and he ignored piles of unpaid bills and unanswered letters for months on end. To dodge creditors who often staked out the theater's main entrance, he resorted to sneaking in and out via the fire escape. In an effort to reclaim his youth, he turned to hormone pills that promised to restore vitality. He even tested the effects with chorus girls in his office. On weekends, while his wife Billie Burke was away in Hollywood, he hosted raucous parties at home, clinging to a facade of virility. It was a tragic decline for a man so terrified of death that he went to absurd lengths to deny its inevitability. In 1931, however, he finally faced the one event he couldn't escape, his own funeral. Olive's journey to stardom began on the stage. She made her screen debut in 1916 with the Beatrice Fairfax series, a production by Wharton Studios in Ithaca, New York, marking her first steps into the film industry. Her role as Rob Malone in the 10th episode, Play Ball, showcased her early potential. Olive quickly realized that acting for the camera was a whole different beast. Still, she made her mark. In a whirlwind effort, she completed 2 five-reel comedy dramas in just 24 days, an impressive feat fueled by her plans to visit Pittsburgh and New York. Her work on the 1918 film Toton was particularly grueling. Olive threw herself into the project, working tirelessly day and night. She often ate meals in her dressing room, using every spare moment to discuss scenes with the director. Fully aware of the film industry's unpredictability, Olive was determined to be more than just a pretty face. She made it her mission to understand filmmaking inside and out, observing and asking questions to expand her knowledge. Her first starring role came in Madcap Madge, released on June 24, 1917, where she played the lively Betty. That year alone, Olive appeared in 6 films, cementing her place as a rising star. Her career gained momentum as she signed with Triangle Pictures and later moved to Hollywood. When producer David O. Selznick launched Selznick Pictures, he built the studio around Olive, signing her for 8 films a year. By 1920, she had appeared in 19 films, a remarkable achievement for such a short span of time. Olive's final film, The Flapper, became iconic, not just for its content, but also for the tragic timing of her death. The movie captured the spirit of the flapper era, celebrating young women who defied societal norms with bold fashion. Despite their bold and rebellious image, flappers were often portrayed as kind-hearted individuals beneath the surface. Olive Thomas perfectly embodied this idea. When Olive tragically passed away from poisoning, suspicion immediately turned to her husband, Jack Pickford, who was with her at the time. Conflicting accounts about what she consumed and why only fueled the rumors. Some reports claimed Olive was able to speak during her final days, allegedly calling out for Jack, which added another layer of controversy. To complicate matters further, the New York Times revealed that Olive had taken out a significant life insurance policy just weeks before her death. Their marriage was known to be rooted in love. Yet, after Olive's death, many pointed fingers at Jack. Florence Ziegfeld even suggested that Jack had broken Olive's heart. Meanwhile, Mary Pickford, Jack's famous sister, reportedly influenced the media's coverage, swaying public opinion somewhat in her brother's favor. Despite the swirling rumors, the attending doctor ultimately ruled Olive's death an accident. Jack Pickford, while often overshadowed by his sister Mary, had a moderately successful film career of his own. When he and Olive married in 1918, she chose to keep her first husband's surname, determined to build her own identity apart from the Pickford name. Jack, however, had a reputation as a womanizer. Olive's mysterious death wasn't Jack's first scandal. In 1918, during his time in the Navy, he became involved in a shady scheme to help men dodge military service. Jack's film career fizzled out by the late 1920s, around the time silent films gave way to talkies. He went on to marry 2 more times, both to Ziegfeld performers, but neither marriage lasted. Perhaps he never truly recovered from losing Olive, his young and radiant bride. For fans, the untimely death of a star like Olive Thomas preserves her beauty and youth forever, sparing them the heartbreak of seeing her face the struggles of aging. In contrast, Mary Pickford, in her later years, battled alcoholism and gradually withdrew from public life. David O. Selznick once described Olive Thomas as a dancing sunbeam suddenly snuffed out like a candle. It's a poetic way of capturing the bittersweet sentiment surrounding her memory. When she passed, Will Rogers organized a private memorial service in Hollywood. Florence Ziegfeld took charge of Olive's funeral arrangements, both managing and financing them, but couldn't bring himself to attend. Ziegfeld was known for sending extravagant floral tributes to honor his peers, but his absence at Olive's funeral was perhaps for the best. He blamed Jack Pickford, Olive's husband, for her death, and had openly vowed to confront him if they ever crossed paths again. The Olive Thomas collection, which includes a documentary and her film The Flapper, offers a glimpse into her life, blending admiration with a touch of morbid curiosity. Despite the challenges she faced, Olive is celebrated as a vibrant, intelligent woman who lived boldly and pursued her dreams with determination. The documentary paints an upbeat picture of her life, tracing her journey from a humble upbringing in Pennsylvania to her rapid rise in New York. By the age of 16, she was married. By 20, divorced. From a shop girl, she climbed the ladder to become a chorus model, a star in the Ziegfeld Follies, and eventually a budding Hollywood actress. Her story, however, ends tragically. At the heart of her Hollywood years was her whirlwind romance and tumultuous marriage to Jack Pickford. Jack's family, particularly Mary Pickford and her mother, wished he would abandon his reckless ways and focus on his career. Olive, however, matched his energy. Despite their ups and downs, they managed to honor their film contracts, continue working, and earn significant wealth. Olive was deeply in love with Jack and had a clear vision for her future, even amidst the turbulence. Olive's character, however, was far from one-dimensional. Her fiery personality often came through, which could shock those around her. Lenore Coffey once recalled a moment that highlighted Olive's candid nature. In a hotel lobby, an elderly woman admired Olive's diamond ring, prompting Olive to casually remark, "It's easy, honey. I got this for 2 humps with a gentleman in Palm Beach." While the story has likely been embellished over time, it underscores Olive's brazen honesty. The filmmakers behind the documentary chose to exclude this anecdote, likely because of its controversial undertones. This omission, however, glosses over a key aspect of Olive's personality, her raw authenticity. Unlike the carefully curated personas of stars like the Gish sisters, Olive was unapologetically herself, even if it meant courting controversy. The documentary focuses on her boldness and her love of partying, presenting her as a new kind of female star, one who broke away from the delicate, refined image of her contemporaries. Olive Thomas was a woman who lived unapologetically on her own terms. While her boldness and charm made her a standout figure, her approach to professionalism wasn't always conventional. During a screen test for a film, Billy Bitzer, the renowned cameraman for D.W. Griffith, was struck by her seemingly nonchalant attitude. Some speculated that Olive's casual demeanor was intentional, a way of signaling that she wasn't going to conform to the rigid norms of the film industry. However, a deeper look at Bitzer's encounter with Olive paints a different picture. The story goes that on her way to select costumes for the screen test, Olive persuaded Bitzer to stop at a bar for a drink. Bitzer, ever the gentleman, agreed to have just one. But when Olive and her friend decided to order another round, and Bitzer objected, tensions flared. Bitzer gave her an ultimatum: the drink or the film role. Olive's friend lashed out, calling him a big slob, while Olive herself snapped back with a sharp "go soak your head." Bitzer, accustomed to the obedient professionalism of actresses like Lillian and Dorothy Gish or Mae Marsh, found Olive's attitude startling. Those actresses revered Griffith as a mentor and father figure, always showing gratitude and loyalty. This fierce self-assurance became Olive's defining trait. She wasn't just a pretty face, she was intelligent and shrewd, often using her charm to navigate the male-dominated film industry. Producers, directors, and even Bitzer himself weren't just colleagues. They were men she could outmaneuver when necessary. While this kind of strategic assertiveness wasn't entirely new, it was rare in the post-World War I film industry. At the time, the only female star with significant power behind the scenes was Mary Pickford. She had honed her skills in this world, and when she transitioned to Hollywood, she carried herself with a commanding presence. Even before her film career, Olive had captivated New York. As a Conover model and Ziegfeld girl, she became a sensation, catching the eye and the heart of Flo Ziegfeld himself. Their affair caused a stir, especially with Ziegfeld's wife, Billie Burke. Her relationships with powerful men were often complex. Jack Pickford, her husband, might have been her greatest love, but also her undoing. In her later years, she left a mark on the Selznick brothers, reportedly having an affair with Myron Selznick and deeply affecting David O. Selznick. There's even speculation that David's adoption of the middle initial O was a subtle tribute to Olive. Olive Thomas was far from ordinary. Her beauty, intelligence, and unrelenting confidence made her a force to be reckoned with in an industry that wasn't ready for someone like her. As Olive's star rose, her personal life became increasingly enigmatic. Carefully crafted for public appeal, movie magazines painted her as witty, sweet, and slightly reserved. Her eyes were often described as light blue or gray, and they seemed to dominate her face. What made them even more striking was a sanpaku quality, the visible white space beneath her iris. In Olive's case, this distinctive feature wasn't a result of malnutrition, but rather a unique aspect of her natural beauty. On screen, her eyes became her signature, setting her apart. They had a magnetic pull, drawing audiences in, whether in a sweeping long shot or an intimate close-up. Among a sea of actresses, Olive's presence was unmistakable. Yet, oddly enough, first-hand accounts of her life are scarce. A former Ziegfeld dancer once shared stories about Olive's time at the Follies. Family members have passed down a few anecdotes. What remains of her legacy is pieced together through her films, studio photos, and formal portraits. Unfortunately, only about half of her films are believed to have survived, with many locked away in private collections and at risk of deterioration due to neglect. Of her available work, The Flapper stands out as the only film easily accessible to audiences today. In the 1917 silent film An Even Break, preserved only in fragments, Olive is seen speeding down a road in a car, pursued by villains with guns and racing against a train. It's the kind of edge-of-your-seat excitement that defined silent films of the era. With her signature long curls flowing behind her, Olive embodies a daring, adventurous spirit as she takes the wheel of a sporty car. For audiences at the time, this was groundbreaking. A woman not only driving but doing so with thrilling abandon, outpacing danger. The scene feels like a snapshot of progress, a moment when women were starting to claim their place in a rapidly modernizing world. These early films, still experimenting with the language of cinema, often have a raw, unpolished quality that adds to their charm. The scene's purpose was simple. Put Olive in a car, let her drive, and capture the thrill. Watching it now, you can sense her genuine excitement. Her expression reveals both eagerness and a hint of inexperience. Some have suggested that Olive's on-screen appeal stemmed from her simply playing herself. There's truth to that. She had a natural ability to inhabit her roles, reacting rather than overacting. As John Wayne once said about movie stars, the emotions you see on screen often feel like an extension of the actor's true self. Olive embodied this effortlessly. She didn't just act, she predicted her personality, amplifying it in a way that captivated audiences. This ability to blur the line between performance and authenticity is what made her a pioneer. The Flapper is packed with scenes that highlight Olive Thomas's undeniable charm, making it easy to forgive the film's shortcomings. It's a breezy, light-hearted comedy, well-made but not particularly groundbreaking. What truly stands out is Olive's portrayal of a character nearly 10 years younger than herself. Watching her as a grown woman dressed in a teenage sailor suit feels a bit out of place, yet her beauty and charisma shine through. By 1920, Olive's career seemed to be on a promising trajectory, thanks to Selznick's marketing efforts for The Flapper and her final film, Everybody's Sweetheart. The public embraced the persona Olive had cultivated, a bold, clever, and naturally captivating young woman. During the World War I era, society's obsession with youth was just as strong as it is today. Films of the 1910s and 1920s often featured young heroines, innocent yet full of spirit. This character type was rooted in 19th-century stage melodramas. For example, D.W. Griffith's 1911 short The Lonedale Operator, starring Blanche Sweet, showcased youthful female leads. Olive's sister-in-law, Mary Pickford, also built her career on playing young girls well into adulthood, a strategy that brought her fame and fortune. By the time Olive Thomas passed away, Mary Pickford, already in her 30s, still seemed poised to continue portraying youthful characters for a while longer. Watching Olive in The Flapper, however, raises the question of how much longer she could have convincingly played such roles. Unlike Pickford, Olive's more mature appearance and undeniable allure at the age of 25 made her unsuitable for playing the role of an innocent girl. Yet, Olive's expressive eyes brought depth to her performances, allowing her to convincingly play a 16-year-old in the film. Perhaps it's the tension between her mature allure and the innocence of her character that makes her portrayal so captivating. The Flapper explores a familiar theme: a teenager's yearning to grow up too quickly. Olive's character, Genevieve King, feels like a prototype for later characters like Gigi. She rebels against the rigid expectations of her conservative hometown, Orange Springs, Florida. Set around the start of Prohibition in 1919, Orange Springs is depicted as so strict that it doesn't even have a saloon to close. After being caught with a boy, Genevieve's father, a senator and likely a widower, sends her to a northern boarding school. At the boarding school, Genevieve, nicknamed Ginger, begins to explore a new world of freedom and mischief. While playing in the snow with her classmates, she catches the attention of Richard Channing, an older man who's admired by many of the girls. During their unauthorized sleigh ride, things take a comedic turn when Ginger ends up dumped in the snow. Richard rescues her, and when she asks if he noticed a man driving away in a sleigh, he humorously responds that he only saw a kid chasing one. Ginger's whimsical adventure begins when Richard invites her to a dance, clearly intrigued by the young girl. Olive Thomas delivers such a genuine performance that modern audiences might find themselves questioning Richard's motives. The film's charm lies in its brisk pacing and entertainment value. Watching her breathe life into Ginger King is a joy, as she perfectly embodies a character lost in her own quirky world. But the film isn't without its darker moments. After a humiliating incident at the dance spirals into chaos, Ginger makes a half-hearted attempt to hang herself from a light fixture. In one particularly memorable moment, Ginger sees another girl sneaking off with a man just as the school's safe is discovered empty. Amid the uproar, Ginger, still clad in her pajamas, tries to feign shock but can barely contain her excitement. She hilariously drags her makeshift noose behind her as she moves from room to room. Ginger's escape to New York City is depicted in a delightful scene where Thomas rides atop a double-decker bus, offering viewers a glimpse of 1920s New York. Her exaggerated reactions to the bustling city, including fending off an overly forward older man, add a layer of humor to the sequence. In New York, Ginger fully embraces the flapper lifestyle, dressing and acting the part of a pleasure-seeking woman. One standout moment shows her smoking in a lush, palm-decorated restaurant. Thomas's portrayal of a flapper leans more toward a traditional feminine style rather than the androgynous look that would later define the 1920s. When Ginger returns to Orange Springs, her vibrant flapper attire, complete with an elegant walking stick, exudes more sophistication than carefree rebellion. Olive Thomas infuses their final scene with Channing with a playful ambiguity, hinting at a double life that's left for the audience to interpret. The story wraps up with Ginger back in her modest gingham dress, signaling the end of her escapades. While The Flapper may not have been groundbreaking, it's an early example of Hollywood's growing skill in crafting engaging narratives. Thomas reportedly had an interest in the filmmaking process itself, and it's possible she dreamed of taking creative control of her work, much like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, or her sister-in-law Mary Pickford. However, the industry was already shifting toward studio dominance by the time of her death, limiting opportunities for independent creators. Even legends like Chaplin and Pickford eventually saw their influence diminish. Despite these uncertainties, The Flapper highlights Thomas's comedic brilliance and hints at her untapped potential as a dramatic actress in her now-lost films. Olive Thomas was a symbol of unfulfilled potential, and that's what makes her story so heartbreaking. Sure, you could admire her beauty in a glossy photo book, but it doesn't hold a candle to watching her light up the screen in the flapper. Playing the ukulele, dancing, and singing, she radiated charm. Her untimely death, however, left a dark stain on Hollywood's already shaky reputation. The media zeroed in on her husband, Jack Pickford, whose wild lifestyle became the centerpiece of scandalous stories about drug use and moral corruption among the stars. Olive's passing set off a domino effect of controversies that rocked the film industry, from the murder of director William Desmond Taylor in 1922 to the drug-related death of actor Wallace Reed in 1923. There was also the infamous case of Fatty Arbuckle, who faced accusations of rape and manslaughter after actress Virginia Rapp's death in 1921. Though Arbuckle was acquitted and Pickford never officially implicated in wrongdoing, their reputations were permanently damaged. The press, always hungry for sensational headlines, painted Olive as a dope fiend, a reckless, drug-addicted woman who defied society's moral expectations. This narrative didn't just tarnish her name, it cast a shadow over Hollywood itself. Olive's tragic end dominated the headlines, making her a symbol of Hollywood's darker side and the fleeting nature of stardom. Studios began including morality clauses in actors' contracts to avoid further disgrace. These events also paved the way for the Motion Picture Production Code, or Hays Code, which strictly regulated the moral content of films from 1934 to 1968. While Olive Thomas may not be a household name today, her tragic story left an indelible mark on the industry. She was Hollywood's first major scandal. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to the channel to follow the next videos. See you again.